Hello, folks. Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and we are recording this episode on Sunday night, August 23rd. And what a dramatic weekend this was for the Chicago White Sox as they win the series against the New York Mets, thanks to the lawn ball. So, ball go far, team go far. The White Sox win both games thanks to the walk-off home run from Jake Rogers and Tristan Peters. Of course, the most likely of home run hitters for the Chicago White Sox. But in this episode, we'll also talk about the struggles for Luis Castillo and preview this week's series as the Texas Rangers are making a comeback in the American League postseason picture. Not only are they trying to chase down the Cleveland Guardians for the wild card spot, but they have tied with the Houston Astros in the American League West. So this is a big series for the Texas Rangers this week in Chicago. Let's take a quick look at the American League Central standings. And again, the White Sox winning 2 out of 3 against the Mets. They still have the lead. They are 68 and 62. The Cleveland Guardians swept the Colorado Rockies, so they're back at 65 and 66. They're back at just one game below 500 and also back into the postseason picture. They currently hold, the final wild card spot. The Minnesota Twins were swept by the San Diego Padres, so they're 5.5 games back of the White Sox. The Kansas City Royals swept the Detroit Tigers. That is a big surprise. So now the Tigers are closer to the Royals than they are to the White Sox. The Tigers are 7 games back of the White Sox and just 4 games ahead of the Kansas City Royals. When you take a look at the latest projections from FanGraphs.com, FanGraphs is now projecting that the White Sox have a 73.8% chance of reaching the postseason, and their odds of winning the American League Central have increased to 61.3% after this weekend. So let's continue talking about what happened this weekend, and joining me is Sox Machine's managing editor. It's Jim Margulis, and hello, Jim. What a dramatic weekend for the Chicago White Sox. They now have 11 walk-off wins this season. As you were writing up the first 10 walk-off wins, makes it so easy to do a top 10, the best of the walk-off wins. But now you have another to consider. And I really think that this weekend, the highlight is the lawn ball, Jim. The home runs were crucial in the White Sox winning this series.
They were, especially game one. The finale, one homer solo shot just happened to be well timed, but until Grant Taylor had his worst inning in quite a long time, it was Andrew Benintendi doubling off the base of the wall, Miguel Vargas scoring from first, the classic baseball action, scoring a run without the benefit of a homer. And that kind of worked for them. But yeah, it was the back-to-back-to-back homers before Rogers went deep in the ninth that defined it. And, they kind of have to do that, and not in a bad way, but it's just like the way teams are constructed, how important the home run is in every postseason. It's always a plot line is you need to figure out different ways to score runs in October. And invariably, it's the teams that hit the most homers that succeed in October. So
Right. Yeah.
as much as you'd like to have that kind of well-rounded offense and have the really uh, good sound performance with runners in scoring position. It's just the state of pitching in 2026, the state of hitting in 2026 to combat that pitching is such that it's really hard to string together 3 good plate appearances in a row. And every team, or at least most teams, struggle with runners in scoring position. This conversation we have about runners in scoring position with the White Sox happens basically across the league. So yeah, it is a I shouldn't say problem, but like a core identity of the White Sox to have to hit the home run. And it's rather than, I guess, bemoaning or saying like, well, they got to figure out other ways to score. Probably the simpler way is say keep hitting homers, keep having balls hit over the top of the fence and over, hit over gloves and over, whatever it takes to get the ball over the fence. It's a lot simpler that way.
Yeah, and there was this tweet that I saw from ESPN Insights that Tristan Peters' walk-off home run on Sunday was the White Sox 5th walk-off home run this season. That's the most in Major League Baseball in 2026. Tristan Peters is the 5th different White Sox hitter to have a walk-off home run. So the list is Brandon Montgomery, Edgar Caro, Jake Rogers, Miguel Vargas, and now Tristan Peters. And for this White Sox team, again, thanks to this weekend, they continue to climb up as far as the leaderboard for most home runs hit by any team in Major League Baseball. The Washington Nationals still lead the league with 183 home runs. The Yankees are second, which is impressive because they really haven't had Aaron Judge for most of the season. They have 179 home runs. The Cubs hit a lot of home runs this weekend against the Seattle Mariners. So the White Sox and Cubs, fittingly, are both tied with 174. The Astros are one home run behind. They have 173. The Reds have 169. The Braves have 167, and so do the Dodgers. So a lot of the teams that are in the postseason race are closer to the top of the home run leaderboard when it comes to Major League Baseball. But then again, for the purist and for the old school, they will point at the Milwaukee Brewers towards the bottom and say the Brewers have the best record of Major League Baseball, and they don't hit a lot of home runs. So that is a fair counterpoint. But there's more winning teams towards the top when it comes to the home runs. But Jim, the White Sox are on pace to hit 217 home runs. To me, that is eye-opening. If you told me before the season that the White Sox have a great chance of hitting 200 home runs, I'd be wondering from who? Is Austin Hayes hitting 25 home runs this season? But here we are, and I definitely think they're going to hit 200. But I guess the question is, do you see this White Sox team reaching this projection of hitting close to 217 home runs this season?
Some context for 217, just because I wanted to see exactly where this fits in terms of what other teams have done. That would tie for fifth among all
Wow.
White Sox teams, all of them in the aughts. So 2004, they hit 242, 2006, 236, 2008, 235, 2003, 220, 2002, 217. So they would tie that team. And then you have actually, yeah, the first 7 years are all in the aughts, because then you have 2002 followed by 2000, 2001. So if it feels like it's that great of offense, it doesn't feel like that. You don't have the kind of the big three. You don't have Frank Thomas, in his last hurrah, I guess, like in terms of his original prime. You don't have that kind of big masher there, to where you think like, oh, this is 200 homers easy. So I'm inclined to say no. But then if you think about it and you say like, well, it feels like they've eased up their pace, but not really, especially in August, to where like they're still on that kind of 220 home run pace. And you're seeing guys in the downswing a little bit, like Colson Montgomery has slowed up, and like, but who's compensating for him? Well, Munetaka Murakami missed 6 weeks, and so he can make up the pace that he lost in the first half. And you see like the Andrew Benintendi, Randall Grichuk, the Randrew DH doing fine. You have like Braden Montgomery, who's kind of underachieving from a power perspective. Tristan Peters seems like he had been underachieving from a power perspective. It seems like after that lull that he went into after the All-Star break, it seems like he's getting back into bringing pitchers into his happy zones a little bit more. And then, maybe Kyle Teal comes back and provides a little bit of something that the catchers haven't really had. So there's probably a way to compensate for guys who might have to ease up, or might, like Colson Montgomery, if he's just this kind of form the rest of the season. Somebody will need to step up to provide what he did in the first half, and maybe there's enough depth there to make it happen. So normally I kind of always bet the under on this, or say like, yeah, they're not going to quite get there, but yeah, let's say they hit it. Like, I don't know if they get to 220, but I feel like they could, as a team, get up to the 217 level.
It's just fascinating that we are talking about one of the best home run hitting teams in White Sox franchise history in 2026. Like, again, a season of surprises. This has been leading the charge, I think, Jim, for this surprise. I think it catches a lot of people off guard. You hear it in national broadcasts when they talk about the White Sox now. It's, yeah, the White Sox still leading the Central. Did you know the White Sox lead the American League in runs scored? And I didn't know that before this weekend. And that's a great, fun little trivia nugget for the Chicago White Sox. And they kind of need to right now, right? Because of how the pitching situation is. But this is where, as a White Sox fan, yeah, Saturday did not go well, but it didn't really feel like sitting in the stands, Jim, that game was really over until like the eighth inning. Even when the White Sox were down 7-3 and they were threatening when they had the bases loaded, that there was this feeling in the ballpark that they're gonna figure it out. Like they're gonna come back just like the night before when the Mets had full control of that game, Jim, up 4-0, and then in a blink of an eye, three straight home runs and the game is tied. Like, while the offense can be frustrating and it's not fun watching Colson Montgomery and Munetaka Murakami, Jim, strike out, especially with runners in scoring position. But this team is still leading the pace in the American League in runs scored. And this is where I think other teams getting closer to the postseason can't sleep on the White Sox, because if you do, they have this amazing ability to have these big innings thanks to the home run.
Yeah, I think that stat, the White Sox leading the American League in runs scored, says about as much about them as it does the American League, because I looked it up just to see where does it fit league wide or like Major League Baseball wide, and it's a distant sixth. You
Okay.
have the Cubs leading the way, the Nationals basically within 2 runs of each other at the top at 684 and 682. The Dodgers 653, Pirates tied at 653. Pirates being tied with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
That's a surprise. Then the Brewers at 650. So then 32 runs later, you get to the White Sox at number 6. And that's good for the White Sox. Like, that's where you want the White Sox to be overall, like sixth in baseball. Sure. That's great. But tops of the American League, it's like, man, I guess with Aaron Judge being out, with the Blue Jays being a disappointment, I think you're probably expecting those teams to be 1-2 in runs scored. And yeah, it's not happening.
Jim mentioned it earlier, but it is one of the storylines of this series. The White Sox struggles with runners in scoring position. They went 2 for 19 this series with runners in scoring position. So if you are looking for ways to improve, this would be an area. Poor Andrew Benintendi, Jim. He had 4 plate appearances with the bases loaded in this series, and all he could muster was a sac fly. He had 3 plate appearances with the bases loaded on Saturday. They just couldn't come up with that big hit. For the season, the White Sox have a 723 OPS with runners in scoring position. That ranks 20th in Major League Baseball. I wonder, I guess I should ask, is this going to be the White Sox offensive Achilles heel as far as trying to hold everyone off in the American League Central, or even looking ahead to the postseason of, if they don't win a series, this might be a reason why?
Yeah, I feel like that's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because that's just another way to say that you didn't score runs.
Okay.
And you know that's the way you get outscored. Like, you typically don't get outscored not hitting at all, or just we lost. Like the White Sox are saying, we lost in a 3-game series, and we got swept, and we only came up with 6 hits over the entire series. That's what it'd be like if they lost without hitting with runners in scoring position. So it almost feels like it's like the horses behind the cart there, just saying like it's if they lose, that's probably going to be culprit no matter what. No matter what team loses, it's going to be because they didn't come up with enough clutch hits, and that means that they were outpitched as well, because that means that your pitchers didn't keep the other offense in check. They didn't shut doors. They didn't limit damage. So that's why it's such a tricky thing to talk about. I mean, it's understandable. I think especially with strikeouts, sometimes you can point the finger at strikeouts, and if they're chasing, if they are getting pitched backwards predictably. And I think you see this with looking at strike 3 down the middle. I think that's
Yeah.
maybe a case where you're getting outthought, where your plan didn't work. You're not having the right approach. Like, that's one thing where you can say they're in their heads, or they are just, they once they get to 2 strikes, or once they get even down 0-1, their entire plan becomes scrambled. That's something you can say. But I think if it's a case where you're 2 for 17, but you strike out like 4 times, and you hit grounders, or you hit like pop up, like that's becomes a case of like, do you have like the inability to hit in the clutch, or did you just have a normal series and you went 2 for 17, the other team went 3 for 16, and that's all it took. Like, the other team
Yeah.
didn't necessarily outperform you. It's the margins are so thin in a lot of games, and especially the postseason when the teams get better, that it does come down to one or two at bats over the course of a game, or maybe even over the course of an entire series, to where it's hard to you can point to it, and certainly like every team is looking to get better, and the White Sox wouldn't say we're fine with runners in scoring position. It's just really a hard thing to try to address and try to we've seen the White Sox kind of do this before in terms of trying to diversify the offense, and they just end up scoring fewer runs because if you have less power, you score fewer runs, and if you try to sequence and stack all your hits well, that's a hard way to make a living. So like that's why I tend to not follow this path too far, just because I think you invite creating problems by trying to solve a very specific one.
I guess the good news is they had that many opportunities. Like they're getting on base. They were getting
Yeah.
hits. They were drawing walks. Miguel Vargas drew 4 walks. He had a great OBP day on Saturday against the New York Mets. Munetaka Murakami's cold right now. Colson Montgomery is cold right now, but yet the White Sox still won this series. I find that to be a positive, and thanks to the home run, that is a way that you can overcome if you're having difficulties finding that one extra hit with runners in scoring position. I'm happy with the 19 number. If the White Sox were 6 for 19, maybe they sweep the Mets. Maybe they figure out a way to win on Saturday. But I wanted to bring that up because that's one of the stats from this weekend. But maybe a cap tip, the biggest stat of all that happened this weekend. Congratulations to Sam Antonacci. He now sets the new single season record for getting hit by a pitch, Jim. 24. He did it. So congratulations to Sam, the new hit by pitch king for the Chicago White Sox. What an honor, Jim.
Yeah, I like that he did it too on a ball that barely clipped his leg, like a seam of the ball hitting a seam of his pants, and that being good enough. Just a real sense of his body and what can move and what can't and what gets locked down. Especially since later in the game, AJ Ewing got his elbow out of the way of a Grant Taylor fastball, and obviously, Grant Taylor
I do the
fastball up and
same.
in. You were not, yeah, but Sam Antonacci, like a guy with his skill set probably doesn't get out of the way or gets like the right part of his shoulder or tricep in the way and takes a glancing blow and that prevented the Mets because Ewing got out of the way. Coward that he is. I say that jokingly because that I get invited to stand into a batting cage and take a 95-mile-per-hour fastball, or don't have any interest in doing that. But just without having, I guess, the technique or Antonacci just kind of having that be such a part of his game is just like, I gotta get on base no matter what, and I will, especially the bases loaded. You would imagine see that those shoulders kind of fixed in place there and just only rotating with the hip to try to get a piece of them. But that changed the game with Ewing getting out of the way. So I think it is a testament to Antonacci's ability to just kind of understand where his body is going to be and what parts can afford to be fixed in place and still not miss a game with this. I will say that's a little bittersweet that Minnie Minoso held that record for 56, so 70 years. Share of it, like Carlos Quentin seemed like he should have lapped him, but he had the injury in that one year. But like Minoso led the league 10 times in hit by pitches. That was a big part of his game. That was part of how he got in base so much, and then he ran like hell when he got in the bases, and was really a big part of the identity of those teams. So to see him knocked off that perch is a little sad. But then I remember that Minosa's in the Hall of Fame, and all those little things of just like you got to remember how he was hit by pitches and how he led the league in triples and stolen bases and really redefined the game. And a lot of that's you got to remember this guy is because he wasn't in the Hall. And so now that he is, it's a lot simpler to say, oh, he's a Hall of Famer, and then have that summarize or be a shorthand reference for just how good he was in a variety of ways.
Well, congratulations to Sam. Maybe he can get to 30. He's currently second right now in Major League Baseball with 24 hit by pitches. Ivan Herrera for St. Louis has been hit by a pitch 27 times. So we may have a couple of players who reach the 30 mark this season. We're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, but coming up next on the Sox Machine podcast, we're going to take a quick review of the players that were acquired at the trade deadline, especially Luis Castillo as he struggled again in his start against the New York Mets, and we'll also be previewing White Sox versus Rangers next on the Sox Machine podcast.
It's time to remind everyone why baseball is glorious, especially nowadays where you could think your team is out of it, but they might be back in it again. Let me introduce you to the American League Wildcard, KP, and let's tell everyone why they might need to head back to SeatGeek, grab some more tickets for what is a playoff race before the playoffs actually begin.
Well, speaking about being out of it, I'm an American League East guy, and I'm talking to you, Toronto fans. I'm talking to you, Baltimore fans. A couple weeks ago, probably not a reason to come out to the games. Look at the standings right now. Both of you teams are right back in this wild card race.
Rangers fans. We can go on and on. Mariners fans, you might be feeling a little queasy, but you're still in this thing too. So, all of you should head to SeatGeek and get yourself 10% off your next set of MLB tickets. 10% off MLB tickets with the promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so that you can use it later.
Howard, I'm so glad I saved your number. My husband fell at a construction site and is in critical condition. I knew it wasn't safe.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I just want to let you know I'm here to help. Yeah, tell me more about it. Work injuries not only affect the victim, but also everyone around them. Inc. Law is Chicago-based and here to advocate on your behalf. With over 100 attorneys and staff, if you or someone you know has questions about a work injury, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Inc. Law.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. Let's quickly review what happened for Luis Castillo. So, even though the home runs and the walk-off wins, very exciting, very happy to be a White Sox fan, winning that series against the Mets. Luis Castillo is a big reason why Saturday went sideways for the White Sox, as he did not get through the third inning. He threw 82 pitches. He threw over 40 pitches in that third inning and still couldn't get out of the inning. So his final line was two and two thirds against the Mets with 8 hits, 4 earned runs allowed, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. And since Castillo has joined the Chicago White Sox, in 4 starts, it's only 18 and a third innings. His earned run average with the White Sox is 5.89. He's walked 5 and he has struck out 19. 10 of those strikeouts came in the one start against Cincinnati. And it's kind of brought into attention for me, Jim, as far as the trade deadline moves for the White Sox. We graded Chris Getz. You gave him a C. I split C+. James Fegan, now at the Sun-Times, gave them a B. And when we're looking at these moves and the immediate impact, I know it's just 3 weeks after the trade deadline, but the White Sox are not getting much from Luis Castillo. Huascar Brazoban is, I don't know what's going on with him, as he gave up another home run on Saturday night. Brenton Doyle's been okay. Joey Bart probably missing the rest of the season because of an injury. So the best acquisition so far is Jose Urquidy, which we all predicted when the White Sox made that trade. What are we supposed to do with this? I know it's only 3 weeks, Jim, and sometimes we fall into this trap as far as the sports media world where we just instantly have to come up with a verdict on how moves went. But is there something here, maybe the lesson learned from the Miguel Vargas trade, where we really harshly graded Chris Getz and what the White Sox did in that move? But now we look at how that move happened 2 years ago, and everyone's thrilled because not only are the White Sox taking advantage of Miguel Vargas now and his production, but they still have Eric Fetty. Funny how baseball life works. So I guess with that experience of just 2 trade deadlines ago and how Vargas has become the player that he has, should we be a little bit more cautious before casting judgment on what happened to the White Sox at this trade deadline?
Yes and no. I would say that when it comes to like Huascar Brazoban and the way he's pitched so far, like he's there for immediate help. He was supposed to be plug and play. It looked like a fine pickup for a decent price and fine in terms of like, would say like satisfactory, not fine in terms of like very good. He looked like he was more or less fit the bill for what they needed, is just right-handed depth. But looking into his late season performances, there's a tendency for a fade there, and he faded with the Mets when they acquired him from the Marlins for the last couple months, and so that, yeah, and then FanGraphs commenters as well saying like, well, he could very well turn into a pumpkin. Reading the post and comments there, and sure enough, like it happened immediately. So that's one where you think like, well, was there a scouting miss there, or was there a case of just maybe not paying enough heed, especially for a season where he's being worked fairly regularly. He is 36 years old. he's a young 36 in terms of major league mileage, but he's lived quite the career. So that's one where I'd say like that doesn't quite fit the Vargas path. Same thing with Castillo. That was the one I was most skeptical about, because it seemed like they were running a risk of taking a bad Sir Anthony Dominguez contract and making it worse, because of just either Dominguez fatigue or feeling like there's a buy low gamble here with Castillo. But if it's not, then like now you're dealing with a more onerous contract to try to have to unload or work around on the books, especially if they're not ready to really scale up their spending yet. So that's one where it kind of concerned me in terms of like, is this like just a panic move, and just the opportunity of getting out from under Dominguez and avoiding awkwardness of the bullpen, invited a different kind of problem by bringing in Castillo. I think Doyle might be the one that fits the Vargas one the most. He's not like a post type prospect because he's had a few years and he's had more like one good year already with the Rockies. But in terms of hasn't been able to recapture it, he's been kind of out of sorts. He came to the White Sox wanting to feel like he used to, and the White Sox might have an idea for it. In the meantime, serves a purpose of helping protect Tristan Peters a little bit against lefties, and gives the White Sox his true center fielder, so Peters doesn't have to be out there if the White Sox really would rather avoid it. So he already serves a purpose now, the way like Vargas served a purpose by getting starts even when it was going awful for him and he looked miserable. Mm-hmm. And that's the one guy I would say like, let's wait for next year for that one. To kind of have a verdict there, because at least he's playing defense up the middle, and that helps his team. But I think with Castillo and Brazoban, just, Castillo, he has another year of control. Brazoban's got multiple years of team control. So you don't want to write them off immediately, but they were veterans acquired for immediate help. And when Castillo doesn't go 3 innings, and when Brazoban he's getting rocked right now. I mean, it's not only runs, but just a stream of hard hit balls and balls hit in the air. The ground ball rate's like half of what it was with the Mets. Like that's scary. Or like that's now that's the front man of your bullpen. He might be optioned. The White Sox might have to option him if it keeps going that way, just because of it's not working. And when's he going to pitch? So that's, I think, and Joey Bart is irrelevant just because of 2 games, bad luck. Yeah. They have Jake Rogers now. He fits that veteran catcher bill. So you just shrug off that one. But yeah, I think you can't quite say, wait for Miguel Vargas just because they are competing this year. And while these moves have 2027 value theoretically, Chris Getz really needed to help 2026 as well, given where the team is.
Yeah, it's just, I'm a bit surprised that they're not getting much out of Luis Castillo, Jim, at least on the innings front. Like, first start, 4 innings. Second start, best start, and one that we thought was going to spur a comeback for Luis Castillo when he went 7 innings against Cincinnati. His last 2, his third start against the Cubs, 4 2/3 innings. Can't get out of the 5th inning. Maybe if Vargas makes that defensive play, or if he doesn't throw it past Murakami, maybe Castillo gets through that 5th inning. But he just didn't have like a strikeout pitch against the Mets. Like, he just could not get out of that 3rd inning. Just really high pitch counts, only going 2 2/3
17 foul balls at inning.
Yeah, he just couldn't figure out an out pitch like against the Mets. And it's only 18 innings that he's covered in 4 starts. And I really thought, this is a guy that could give you at least 5. The White Sox really need that right now. And if he is a liability, I know we're talking about like the White Sox starting rotation is like 3 guys and then it's 2 bullpen games. But really, it just feels like 2.5 starting pitchers. I have confidence in Anthony Kay, Jim. I have confidence in Sean Burke. No idea with Luis Castillo. Like, right now, out of the first 4 starts, it's more likely that they're going to have to use the bullpen for at least 5 innings in a Luis Castillo start, and that completely defeats the purpose and why the White Sox acquired him in the first place. So I kind of put the onus on Castillo here because, Jim, he's the veteran. Like, I don't know how quickly the White Sox can make adjustments with him, and I know that they want him to throw more changeups as far as like the pitch calling mix, but he's got to step it up here, man. Like, that can't happen again like it did against the Mets. So the next time he makes a start for the White Sox, it's going to be a big one. It's going to be in Minneapolis at Target Field against the Twins, who are still holding out for hope, Jim. They really need Luis Castillo to figure this out.
Yeah, it's yeah, especially when you look at the other starters that went, like watching Clay Holmes pitch pretty well. That's the case where um, it seemed like, I know Chris Getz has to worry about next year's rotation as well, and that this was an opportunity to try to find somebody who's an awkward fit for their team. And so, like, I understand the appeal of trading Dominguez, so you don't want your roster, for Castillo. It's a change of scenery trade for both. One team's headaches might become a benefit to the other team just because of opportunities. There's so many bullpen spots. There's so many rotation spots. The barrier for contributing is relatively low when you need a 5th starter or if you need like a 6th inning reliever. So you understand why Chris Getz saw an opportunity here, but it did feel kind of too cute by half, just trying to see, like, pull, not that he's trying to pull one over on the Mariners. Like, everybody's got needs, and ideally, like, every trade would be win-win, or at least a lot of trades would be win-win, because you want reason to keep trading. You want a reason to for teams to see your roster as a way to solve problems and vice versa. But it almost seemed like, Castillo has been this awkward fit the whole time. He hasn't been able to get guys out. He just needs to throw his changeup more when he's been throwing sliders for years. It did seem a little bit too on the nose to be that simple, and so far that's proven the case. But yeah, I guess the good news is a few turns left in the rotation. Probably Davis Martin is, when he's ready to return, that might be when there's a big reckoning with any rotation spots and who gets kicked down. You're seeing Eric Fetty bounce back in this bulk role after being bumped to the bullpen. Like, maybe he's earned a reason to hang around in his current rotation arrangement after being bumped out by Castillo when he arrived. So yeah, I think I'm looking at Davis Martin's return as for when this conversation gets a lot more serious.
That's interesting. I did not take that into consideration of Castillo being moved to the bullpen, Jim. It's so much money. That's why. Like, it's a lot of money, but it's all about performance now for the rest of the season. And Castillo really needs to pick it up. That and Brazoban. The White Sox have to figure out what's going on with him too. I don't know if anyone's ready to go in Charlotte to replace Brazoban, but the White Sox need more out of the guys they acquired before the trade deadline. Jim and I will take one last break for a word from our sponsors, but coming up next, we're going to be previewing White Sox versus Rangers next on the Sox Machine podcast.
One of the things that I wasn't very good at was playing Major League Baseball. One of the things that I'm really good at is sweating. Even now, when I'm not playing, I need hydration. I need to make sure it's convenient. That's why I choose Quince.
Yep. Quince electrolyte stick packs to the rescue, Kratz. They taste great, and the zero sugar options are stevia-free. They're keto approved, naturally sweetened with fermented rice. And like everything Quince does, they're thoughtfully made and priced well at $20 for 30 servings. They're less than half of the leading brand. Give your body what it really needs to stay hydrated. Go to quince.com/foul for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/FOUL for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/foul. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. The Texas Rangers now visit the Chicago White Sox, and You wouldn't believe it, but the Rangers at 65 and 66 are currently tied for first place in the American League West with the Houston Astros. They won their last game. They are 5-5 in their last 10. They have not been great on the road this year. They are 29 and 37. All 3 games between the White Sox and Rangers this week are at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Your first game on Monday night, it's Kumar Rocker, who has been awesome against the White Sox. So that's the bad news. The White Sox have to figure out Kumar Rocker. But Jose Urquidy is right now going to be the starter for the White Sox, a projected bulk guy. We'll see how far he goes. Again, he was electric against the Chicago Cubs at his last outing. On Tuesday night, it's Jacob deGrom for the Texas Rangers against Anthony Kay for the White Sox. And on Wednesday night, it's Mackenzie Gore for the Texas Rangers against Sean Burke. And Jim, this is an interesting series because Texas really needs this one to keep their postseason hopes alive. This is not an easy pitching matchup for the White Sox offense. Kumar Rocker has had outstanding starts against the White Sox, but the White Sox did hit Jacob deGrom a little bit. And we'll see how they fare against Mackenzie Gore. But at least on the pitching front here for the White Sox, they got Anthony Kay and they got Sean Burke going. It's been a lot of stress. It's been a lot of anxiety watching these White Sox games in the last couple of weeks. And I have a feeling it's going to be more of the same in this series against the Texas Rangers. How are you feeling about this series between the White Sox and Rangers?
I would like to see the White Sox win 2 out of 3, and not just for the obvious benefits of hosting a White Sox podcast where we want people to enjoy the product, but also because of watching the NL or AL West just not surface a real threat and kind of giving the Central a little bit of a boost just by no longer being the default bad division or the division where just like, what are these records even? Reminds me of 1994 before the strike. When the Rangers were leading the AL West at 52 and 62. 10 games under 500, good enough to lead. The Royals were in third place in the AL Central that year at 64 and 51. That's how that was like the end of the kind of that Royals era of being like a real respectable team, like year in and year out in the 80s and 90s. And that's kind of where it all started falling apart for them. But yeah, I haven't been able to figure out the Rangers all year. Haven't been able to figure out I guess easier to figure out the Mariners now just because they've had some really ugly games and Cal Raleigh doesn't look like he's going to rally this year. And you realize how much of the Mariners kind of built around him offensively. And, it's not going from a near MVP season to average would be something, but to go from near MVP and build your team kind of around that person to one of the worst players in the league is really remarkable. And then the Astros, I think, have been kind of what I thought the Astros would be. And that just kind of getting thinned out over the years, but still formidable if you catch them in the right series. So I feel like I understand the Astros, but the Rangers and I guess the Rangers are now the one team I still standing. Seems like they could get hot anytime because like the name brand pitching like deGrom and Gore, that's a good back-to-back starters, and they're able to have like a rotation turn that looks really impressive, but just the results aren't there. The lineups sometimes a little bit short, even though there's name brand talent there too. And yeah, it's not an easy matchup for the White Sox, but I think the Rangers in the entire year have been playing a little bit like behind teams or other teams are giving them a hard time that they wouldn't expect. So the White Sox seem like, there's a strain of pessimism, I would say, and I'm sure you've noticed this too in the comments and elsewhere, just waiting for the bottom to fall out. But I think the Rangers are a decent team. They're I would say kind of close to the Reds a little bit, and that's the Reds took 2 out of 3 from the White Sox, but just they're in that middle class, and they should be able to win any series. But also, there's a reason why they're still under 500 at this point, and the White Sox, there's a reason why they're over 500. So, but I really want to see a team win the division under 500, just to make October real weird. And I would like the White Sox to have a hand in that.
Fly that banner, right?
Yeah.
Banners fly forever. American League West champions 79 and 83.
And if it happened to the White Sox would take it.
Oh, yeah. After what happened the last 3 years, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The White Sox have already hit the over for their over-under total wins for the season. Those bets cashed if you were on the over for win total for the White Sox in late August, which is a pleasant surprise. Though the other thing I'm going to be paying attention to, other than can the White Sox score runs against Kumar Rocker, Jim? Because again, Rocker has been excellent against the White Sox in his young career. If Jose Urquidy could go 5 or 6 innings, fantastic. But this is also the end of this 16 straight game stretch over 16 days. And the White Sox get a much needed day off on Thursday. And then it's a key series against the Minnesota Twins. And I'm looking to see if Davis Martin's going to be ready to rejoin the White Sox. He's eligible to come back. But I know you cover the minor keys for us, and you've been keeping an eye on how guys are faring in Charlotte. And I just don't think the White Sox can continue doing this whole back-to-back bullpen type of games to get through September. And I know September call-up period is also coming up. Is this also a week to kind of keep an eye on Charlotte to see who deserves a chance to be a starting pitcher? Like, is it possible we could see maybe Noah Schultz or Drew Thorpe or even Shane Smith join the White Sox this upcoming weekend in Minneapolis to take a start?
I would rule out Smith. Not going well for him. The fastball was at 93 his last start on Sunday. So it's, and I think he has to bully hitters with the fastball in order to be what he was last year. And it doesn't seem like he's able to summon that. So set him to the side. I think the candidates are, Schultz, you mentioned. Right now, he's being limited to 4 innings. Like, I'm not sure what the plan is the rest of the season for him. If he's throwing 4 innings, not, maybe it's like a left-handed version of Fetty to where like he's more of a bulk guy than a starter who's going to give you 6. But it seems like his development is kind of in a holding pattern right now as they try to get him through the rest of the year. I would say maybe Drew Thorpe would be the most ready of the starters just because he's been completing 5 with ease. The changeup looks like it's back. For him, it's just a matter of like, does he have enough power to really allow the changeup to play up that often? And are the slider and cutter distinct pitches at the major league level? Do hitters see them differently? Do they help set him up different ways as he goes through the lineup multiple times? But based on what he's shown in AAA as he completes this rehab stint, looks like he's at least ready to show what that looks like against major league hitters. If it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. But in terms of just how easily he's throwing 5 and competing in the strike zone and getting swings and misses with that changeup when he sets it up and he's setting it up, then may as well go with him. I think Jonathan Cannon is another guy who's just, if they need somebody to go 6, like he's been going 6 when it's going well. Sometimes it doesn't go well, but he's been able to like absorb a rough inning and keep going. I think he's more of a, pardon the pun, but like fodder, cannon fodder. He's more somebody you put in there just to buy a day. If it goes well, it goes well. If not, you can still like try to push him 5 innings plus and just save your bullpen. He's probably the best case for that. If you don't necessarily care about his ERA, how it looks at the end of the season. And then David Sandlin is there as well. He's pitching okay in terms of results. The peripherals don't quite match it. And it's hard to know based on, the stuff is legit in terms of like velocity, the sharpness of his curveball. Like when he executes a great curveball off a fastball, you get like, oh, this is a major league pitch combination. And maybe he doesn't get strikeouts because like hitters are just off balance and they're able to make contact, but he's limiting hits and maybe that's how it manifests itself. But we've seen him a few times at the major league level and can hit a wall, and you have to worry about that. So I think I would put him with Schultz on the second tier. I think Thorpe is top tier for me in terms of choices. And then below them is Cannon for one reason, and then Sandlin and Schultz for the other reason of just like, you might get 3 dynamic innings, but after that, be on guard.
All right. No, that's good insight. So thank you for that, Jim. And again, we'll see how this week shakes out. Of course, we're all going to be paying attention to how the White Sox fare against the Rangers this week at Rate Field. But even after the day off, the White Sox hopefully could find some answers as we inch closer to September for the final run of the 2026 season. 32 more games left to go, Jim. Here we go. This is the mad dash to the finish line for everybody, and it seems like a lot of teams are still alive in the American League, and the White Sox still have the second seed and still leading the American League Central. Of course,
32 games that'll feel 32 games that'll feel like 64.
Yes, it's gonna be a long month. It's gonna be a long month covering this White Sox team.
It's like when teams go to extra innings and they say free baseball, and it's like free baseball the month. It sounds fun. It's not, but it is fun for games to count, for decisions to matter, for players and coaches to be second guessed. Like, it's after 3 years being what the last 3 years were, it's nice to get this granular and for starts to matter and for overachievement, underachievement to resonate this much.
It's that Paul Rudd meme. Look at us. Can you believe it? I can't. But it's a great time to be a White Sox fan. It was a dramatic series win against the Mets. Let's see if there's more dramatics this week against the Texas Rangers. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If this is a video podcast now, which you could watch on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. We've also been doing some live streams as of late. We'll continue to do that, especially the month of September, especially leading into the postseason. So to make sure to be notified of any new videos from us, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. And then you could also listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Follow us on social media. We've been posting as far as our news stories, especially going on with the new stadium. A lot of you have been introduced to us. So if you are just listening to this now because of that reporting, welcome. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. We're at Sox Machine. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. And if you would like to help support Sox Machine, you could do so by becoming a Sox Machine subscriber. Go to SoxMachine.com/products. Take advantage of our first month sale. It's just 53 cents. After that, it's $5 a month, but a Sox Machine subscription gets you the ad-free version of the website and the podcast. Also unlocks the comment section as well for you. We have been getting more and more people inquiring to join our Veterans Committee. We absolutely love that. Our VC members, we meet with them and we heed their advice and insight on how we shape and structure our content covering the Chicago White Sox. So if you are interested in joining our VC, we still have some spots open. Again, inquire within at SoxMachine.com/products. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You are for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.